Every culture that ever existed saw the same stars and created completely different stories about them. Those patterns of light we call constellations are far more than random dots. They are the starborn heroes of our collective imagination, living legends written across the night sky. We are about to uncover how these celestial figures transformed from simple navigation aids into the fundamental archetypes that shaped human civilization itself. You will discover the secret psychological reason why we see heroes and monsters in the stars, and learn why these ancient stories are more relevant to your life today than you might realize. Why did cultures from the deserts of Africa to the islands of Polynesia all independently see a great hunter in the same group of stars we call Orion? And what profound truth does that reveal about us? What deep human need was so powerful that we permanently populated the heavens with our greatest tales? What story does the night sky tell about you, that first human to look up and see not just points of light, but a great bear, a mighty hunter, or a river of spirits, performed a quiet revolution? This was the moment the sky transformed from a random scattering into a storybook. For the earliest cultures, this celestial narrative was not mere entertainment, it was essential for survival. The stars were the world's first calendar and GPS, their predictable movements dictating when to plant crops and when to harvest, guiding hunters across vast, featureless deserts and sailors over trackless oceans. In ancient Mesopotamia, priest astronomers carved their observations into clay tablets, meticulously recording the wanderings of planets they saw as gods. They believed the cosmos was a direct reflection of divine intention, a celestial code that, if cracked, could reveal the fate of kings and empires. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Aboriginal Australians looked upon the shimmering band of the Milky Way and saw a celestial river, alive with the spirits of their ancestors who had shaped the land itself. For them, the night sky was not a distant mystery, but a living, breathing part of their daily reality, a map of their law, and their very identity. This profound connection, this innate need to find order and story in the cosmos, is the bedrock upon which all constellation myths were built. It answers a fundamental question: why did we populate the heavens with our stories? Because we first found our own survival, our own meaning, written in their eternal light. Our brains are hardwired to find faces in clouds and animals in the stars. This deep-seated cognitive trait, the relentless search for patterns in the chaos, is the very engine that drove the first celestial cartographers. They looked upon the vast, untamed wilderness of the night sky and began to draw lines connecting the brightest points of light into familiar forms. A curve of stars became a lion's mane, a straight line a hunter's belt, a cluster of dimmer lights a fish's tail. They were not just mapping the heavens, they were taming them, transforming an overwhelming expanse into a populated landscape of gods, beasts, and heroes. This was not a random act of imagination, but a systematic process. The Babylonians, meticulous observers of the cosmos, carved the path of the sun into 12 distinct sections, creating the Zodiac. Each segment was more than a constellation. It was a celestial marker tied to the turning of the seasons and the rhythm of planting and harvest. Their work laid down a grid of meaning upon the sky. Far to the south, the ancient Egyptians watched for the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star. Its reappearance just before dawn coincided with the Nile's life-giving flood, an event so reliable it was seen as a divine command, a signal from the gods to begin the planting season. For them, the star was the goddess Sopdet, a celestial herald ensuring their survival. These early star maps were therefore dual in nature. They served the most practical of human needs, navigation and agriculture, while simultaneously encoding a culture's deepest values and cosmological beliefs into the permanent record of the heavens. By drawing a bull or a scorpion among the stars, they were not merely labeling, they were storytelling. They were building a bridge between the mundane world of human struggle and the divine realm of the eternal, a bridge made not of stone but of starlight and myth. This grand organization of the cosmos provided the essential structure, the celestial stage upon which the great dramas of mythology could unfold. This deep psychological impulse to see stories in randomness has a name: pareidolia. It is the very same mental shortcut that lets you see a face in the moon or a dragon in a passing cloud. Our ancestors were not just gazing at the stars, they were subconsciously connecting the dots, their minds instinctively seeking the familiar in the vast unknown. This universal human trait is why cultures with no contact whatsoever often saw remarkably similar shapes in the same star clusters. The grand constellation of Orion, for instance, was almost universally recognized as a great hunter or warrior, a powerful figure striding across the celestial sphere. But the stories they told about him were deeply personal, a reflection of their own world. For the Greeks, he was a boastful giant forever chased by a scorpion. For the ancient Egyptians, he was the god Sa, the father of the gods, linked to Osiris and the promise of rebirth. Each culture projected its own myths, its own values, and its own fears onto that same pattern of light. The Greek philosopher Plato took this connection a step further, proposing a profound idea: that the human soul itself originated among the stars before descending to Earth. In his view, our fascination with the constellations was a form of homesickness, a spiritual longing for our celestial origin. This was not just mythology, it was an early attempt to explain a feeling many of us still recognize, that sense of awe and belonging when we look up at a starry night. Meanwhile, in North America, indigenous tribes looked at the 7 bright stars we call the Big Dipper and saw a great bear. The 3 stars of the handle were hunters in perpetual pursuit. Their story explained the turning of the seasons as the bear seemed to circle the northern sky, sometimes high and strong, other times low and wounded. This was not a simple children's tale. It was a sophisticated narrative that encoded vital knowledge about animal behavior, hunting cycles, and the passage of time, all while reflecting a deep, respectful relationship with the natural world. This universal act of mythological projection did more than just create pretty pictures. It built a psychological anchor for humanity. By placing their greatest heroes, their most terrifying monsters, and their most important lessons in the heavens, people created an eternal storybook. These stories helped them navigate the emotional challenges of life, providing comfort in the face of mortality and a sense of order in a seemingly chaotic universe. The resonance of these myths across millennia is not a coincidence. It is a testament to a shared human need to find our own reflection in the silent, watching stars. The Greek imagination did not simply populate the sky. It built a new Olympus there, a celestial court where the dramas of gods and mortals played out for all eternity. Look at the constellation of Orion, the mighty hunter. To the Greeks, he was not just a random figure, but a specific character, a giant of such skill and pride that he boasted he could kill every beast on earth. For this hubris, the goddess Gaia sent a scorpion to slay him. You can still see this cosmic chase frozen in the heavens, for as Orion sets in the west, the constellation Scorpius rises in the east, the hunter forever fleeing his mortal enemy. This story is more than a myth. It is a moral lesson written in starlight, a permanent warning against the dangers of excessive pride. Nearby, the tiny, sparkling cluster of the Pleiades tells a more sorrowful tale. These 7 sisters were the objects of Orion's relentless pursuit, and to save them, the god Zeus transformed them into doves and then into stars. Yet even now, Orion seems to follow them across the sky, an eternal, unfulfilled desire. Then there is Cassiopeia, her distinct W shape circling the North Star. She was a queen who arrogantly claimed her daughter was more beautiful than the sea nymphs. As punishment, the god of the seas, Poseidon, chained her to her throne and placed her in the heavens, condemned to spend half of every night upside down as a further lesson in humility. These are not isolated fables, but parts of a grand, interconnected tapestry. The celestial bear, Ursa Major, was once the nymph Callisto, transformed by a jealous Hera. The hero Perseus, who holds the head of Medusa, saved the princess Andromeda, who is chained to her own constellation nearby. This elaborate family tree in the stars did more than entertain. It mirrored the complex social and political hierarchies of ancient Greek city-states. The gods on high acted with the same passions and flaws as humans below, their stories making abstract concepts of fate, divine justice, and the consequences of challenging authority instantly understandable and unforgettable. By projecting their pantheon onto the cosmos, the Greeks created a universal storybook where the highest virtues and the most tragic flaws were forever on display. A nightly reminder that the rules governing human society were, quite literally, written in the stars. The Greek constellations may dominate our modern star charts, but they represent only a single chapter in a global story. Far from the Mediterranean, Chinese astronomers looked upon the very same night sky and saw a completely different reality. They envisioned the heavens as a vast, celestial version of their own imperial court, meticulously divided into enclosures. Here, the stars formed not gods and monsters, but palaces, marketplaces, and administrative buildings, a perfect celestial bureaucracy mirroring the one on Earth. The star we know as Polaris, the North Star, was the heavenly emperor himself, surrounded by his family and ministers in the purple, forbidden enclosure. This system was not merely symbolic, it was a fundamental tool for governance and philosophy, reinforcing the Confucian ideals of order, hierarchy, and harmony that defined their civilization. Across the Pacific Ocean, the Inca gaze fell upon the shimmering river of the Milky Way. Where others saw a path or a spill of milk, they saw the dark, dust-obscured regions within it as celestial animals. A dark patch near the Southern Cross became a great mother llama, Yacana, with a baby llama beside her. Another dark cloud formed a fox, a toad, and a serpent. These were not arbitrary shapes. Their positions and movements were intimately tied to the agricultural calendar and religious ceremonies, guiding the planting of crops and the timing of festivals. For the Inca, the cosmos was a living, breathing part of their ecosystem, its creatures directly influencing the fertility of the land. This practical connection to the stars reached its zenith with the Polynesian voyagers. For them, the night sky was a vast, dynamic ocean chart. They used mental star compasses, memorizing the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars and constellations to navigate the world's largest ocean. Their stories were not focused on the dramas of gods, but on the art of wayfinding. The constellation we call Scorpius might be seen as the fishhook of the demigod Maui, while the Pleiades cluster was a group of little eyes known as Matariki, whose heliacal rising marked the start of the new year. The Polynesian relationship with the stars was one of pure function and deep reverence, a knowledge system that allowed them to conquer the Pacific. From the imperial order of the Chinese court to the animal spirits of the Andes and the navigational genius of the Pacific, these diverse celestial visions reveal a profound truth. The night sky was a universal canvas, but every culture painted it with the colors of their own world, their own environment, and their own deepest beliefs. This incredible variation is not a sign of confusion, but a testament to the limitless adaptability of the human imagination when faced with the silent, starry vastness above. These celestial heroes do more than just adorn the night. They follow a script as old as storytelling itself. The mythologist Joseph Campbell identified this universal pattern, the hero's journey, a cycle of departure, initiation, and return that maps directly onto our own psychological growth. Look at the constellation of Perseus, forever holding the head of the Gorgon Medusa. His story is a perfect blueprint for this journey. He departs from his home, answering a call to adventure. He enters the initiation phase, facing the ultimate terror of a gaze that turns men to stone, and through cunning and divine aid, he triumphs. His return is marked by rescuing the Princess Andromeda, achieving a transformation that elevates him to the stars. His entire quest, frozen in the night sky, is a powerful allegory for the human process of confronting our deepest fears to achieve a fundamental change in our own character. Nearby, the sprawling narrative of Hercules is told across multiple constellations, each one commemorating one of his 12 labors. Here is the archetypal hero pushed to his absolute limit, facing seemingly impossible challenges, from slaying the Nemean lion to cleaning the Orion stables. Each labor represents a stage of initiation, a test of strength, wit, and virtue. His ultimate reward was not just rest but apotheosis, a transformation into an immortal god. These stellar narratives were not simple entertainment for ancient audiences. They were profound psychological models. They provided a template for courageous behavior in the face of overwhelming odds. They illustrated the importance of moral decision-making when the stakes were life and death. They taught the value of perseverance, showing that even the greatest heroes must endure a long and difficult path before achieving their goal. The very rhythm of the night sky reinforced this message. The cyclical nature of constellations, their annual disappearance below the horizon only to return again months later, mirrored the eternal recurrence of the hero's journey in every human life. We all face periods of struggle that feel like a descent into darkness, followed by moments of triumph and renewal. By internalizing these celestial stories, an individual could look up at Perseus and see not just a random hero, but a reflection of their own struggles. They could find personal meaning in their challenges, understanding their life as part of this grand, archetypal pattern of departure, initiation, and return. The consistent presence of these narrative structures across different cultures is no accident. It points to a fundamental psychological function, a deep human need for stories that guide us, that give our struggles a shape and our triumphs a context. This is the true power of the Starborn heroes. They are not merely legends from the past, but eternal guides for the journey we are all still on. These celestial stories were far more than simple entertainment for a pre-literate world. They were the original moral compasses, their light guiding not just travelers on Earth, but also the ethical choices of entire societies. Consider the tale of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the great and little bears. In Greek myth, they were the nymph Callisto and her son Arcas, transformed by Zeus to save them from the vengeful wrath of his wife Hera. Placed safely in the sky, their story became a permanent celestial lesson about compassion, the protection of the vulnerable, and the tragic consequences of jealousy and human cruelty. Every time a parent pointed out the Big Dipper to their child, they were not just identifying a star pattern, they were reinforcing a core value about the duty to shield the innocent from harm. This narrative was woven directly into the fabric of the night, ensuring the lesson was as enduring as the stars themselves. High in the northern sky, the constellation Draco, the dragon, coils around the celestial pole. In one Roman myth, this was the dragon slain by the goddess Minerva and tossed into the heavens. Its presence there is a powerful symbol, representing the eternal triumph of wisdom and strategic thought over raw, chaotic, and destructive forces. The dragon's fixed position, forever circling but never dominating the pole star, served as a constant, silent reminder that intelligence and reason must ultimately govern brute strength. This ethical framework was not unique to the classical world. Many Native American traditions looked upon the three brilliant stars of Orion's belt and saw a different kind of lesson. They were often three hunters who, in their pursuit of game, forgot to show proper respect and gratitude to the spirits of the animals they hunted. As a consequence, they were placed in the sky as a perpetual reminder to all who gazed upward. This story encoded a crucial ecological and spiritual principle, teaching that hunting was not a right but a sacred exchange, demanding respect for the life taken to sustain the community. These were not abstract philosophies discussed by elites. They were accessible, unforgettable ethical frameworks delivered through the most spectacular classroom imaginable. The permanent, cyclical nature of the constellations ensured these values were reinforced with every turning season, their retellings around campfires and in village squares weaving moral instruction directly into the cultural consciousness. The heavens themselves became a dynamic scroll, its stories ensuring that the wisdom of the ancestors continued to illuminate the path for generations to come. The stars themselves wrote the plot for these celestial legends. Their predictable movements across the sky did not just mark time, they dictated the very narrative arcs of the myths, transforming astronomical events into dramatic turning points for the gods and heroes above. In ancient Egypt, the appearance of Sirius just before the sun at dawn, an event known as its heliacal rising, was a moment of profound importance. It perfectly coincided with the annual, life-giving flood of the Nile River. This was not seen as a mere coincidence, but as a direct act of divine will. The star became the goddess Sopdet, the companion of Osiris, and her appearance signaled a time of rebirth, renewal, and the promise of another harvest. The entire Egyptian cycle of life, death, and resurrection was mirrored in this one celestial event, making the myth an inseparable part of their agricultural and spiritual reality. This deep connection between event and story was a global phenomenon. The slow, grand wobble of Earth's axis, called the precession of the equinoxes, gradually shifts the positions of the constellations over a cycle of 26,000 years. While imperceptible in a single lifetime, ancient astronomers in cultures from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica detected this slow drift over centuries. They interpreted it as a cosmic battle, a fundamental shift in the celestial order. The movement of the sun at the spring equinox from the constellation of Aries into Pisces, for instance, was seen by some as the dawn of a new age, a narrative of cosmic change written in the slowest, most epic handwriting imaginable. More sudden celestial dramas were woven directly into the fabric of existing myths. A solar eclipse might be interpreted as a dragon or a wolf temporarily swallowing the sun, a moment of terror that required ritual and prayer to restore balance. The unexpected arrival of a brilliant comet or a sudden meteor shower was rarely seen as a random natural event. Instead, it was a divine signal, an omen of a king's death, a warning of impending war, or a herald of a great birth. These spectacular events injected a powerful sense of immediacy and divine intervention into the stable, cyclical stories of the constellations. Even the simple, annual disappearance of a constellation below the western horizon for a few months was imbued with deep meaning. This predictable vanishing act naturally gave rise to stories of death, a journey to the underworld or a period of trial, followed by a triumphant resurrection upon its return in the eastern sky before dawn. This cyclical pattern of departure and return mirrored the human experience of sleep, the changing seasons, and the hope for life after death. By grounding their myths in observable celestial mechanics, ancient cultures created a powerful fusion of science and story. The predictability of the stars gave the myths a foundation in truth, while the stories gave the cold, mathematical movements of the heavens a human heart and a soul. This interconnection created a sophisticated worldview where the universe was not a random collection of objects, but a coherent, intelligible, and deeply meaningful narrative, one that we are only just beginning to fully appreciate. The Zodiac represents the ultimate fusion of cosmic observation and personal destiny. Here, the grand stories of the stars were brought down to Earth, directly linked to the character and fate of every individual. This system of 12 constellations, each one a chapter in a celestial epic, began with the Babylonians over 2,000 years ago. They were master astronomers who carefully mapped the sun's apparent path across the sky, a band they called the ecliptic. They divided this path into 12 equal sections, each named for the constellation that appeared within it. This was not merely a calendar for tracking seasons. It was the birth of a profound idea that the movements of the heavens were intimately connected to events on Earth, from the harvest to the fate of empires. The framework they created was a work of mathematical precision, but its soul was pure mythology. The Greeks and Romans adopted this Babylonian structure and infused it with their own rich pantheon of heroes and gods. The constellation of Aries was no longer just a ram, but the magical golden ram that saved the children Nephil and whose fleece would later be sought by Jason and the Argonauts. Taurus became the form taken by Zeus as he carried the princess Europa across the sea, a story of divine passion and transformation. The twins of Gemini were immortalized as Castor and Pollux, brothers so devoted that when the mortal Castor was killed, his immortal brother Pollux begged to share his immortality, resulting in their eternal place in the heavens, a symbol of fraternal loyalty stronger than death. Each sign became a vessel for these powerful archetypes, their stories encoding fundamental human traits, desires, and struggles. This personalized connection is the Zodiac's most enduring legacy. The idea that the specific constellation rising on the eastern horizon at the moment of your birth could imprint its mythological essence onto your personality was a revolutionary concept. It transformed the night sky from a backdrop for gods and monsters into a mirror for the human soul. A person born under Leo might be seen to carry the noble, regal, and sometimes prideful nature of the Nemean lion slain by Hercules. Someone under the sign of Scorpio could be associated with the intensity, passion, and transformative power of the scorpion that defeated Orion. This system provided a framework for self-understanding, a way to see one's own life as part of a grand, archetypal narrative written in the stars. While modern science has clearly separated astronomy from astrology, the mythological power of the zodiac remains undiminished. The daily horoscope in a newspaper, though often simplistic, is a direct descendant of the ancient belief that the cosmos speaks to us. It proves that the human desire to find personal meaning in the vastness of space is as strong today as it was for the Babylonian stargazers. The stories of the zodiac continue to offer a language for exploring our own character, our relationships, and our potential. They connect us to an unbroken chain of human wonder, a testament to our timeless need to look up at the familiar patterns of the night sky and see, not just light, but a story about ourselves. These celestial stories were never meant to stay in one place. They traveled, carried along the great trade routes of the ancient world by merchants, soldiers, and scholars, constantly evolving with each new telling. The very constellations we often think of as purely Greek were, in fact, inherited. The Greeks themselves adopted much of their celestial system from the meticulous star charts of the Babylonians, a culture with a far older astronomical tradition. This foundational knowledge was then passed on, first to the Romans, who translated the Greek names into Latin, and then preserved and expanded by Islamic scholars during the European Middle Ages. These astronomers did not just copy the old maps, they refined them, adding new stars and weaving in their own cultural and philosophical interpretations, ensuring this celestial knowledge would one day fuel the European Renaissance. This was not the loss of an original story, but its continuous rebirth, each culture layering its own meaning onto a stable framework of stars. look at the 7 bright stars of the Big Dipper. In Europe, it was a wagon or a plow, a practical tool essential for farming life. Across the Atlantic, many Native American nations saw the very same stars as a Great Bear, its 3 tail stars representing hunters in eternal pursuit. Meanwhile, in classical Arabic astronomy, the same pattern outlined a funeral bier, a coffin carried in a celestial funeral procession. The stars remained constant, but the human imagination, shaped by environment and belief, painted them with entirely different brushes. This cultural exchange reached its peak along the Silk Road, where ideas flowed as freely as silk and spices. Here, Greek astronomical texts met Persian observational data, Indian mathematical theories, and the imperial court astronomy of China. The result was a magnificent fusion, a hybrid mythology where constellations could be seen through multiple lenses at once, their stories enriched by this global conversation. This peaceful blending stands in stark contrast to the era of colonial expansion, when European star names were often imposed by force upon indigenous peoples, overwriting their own ancient sky lore. Yet, in a testament to their resilience, many of these traditional systems survived, passed down through generations via oral tradition, preserving a unique vision of the cosmos. The journey of these starborn heroes from one culture to the next proves their incredible adaptability. Their core identity as important celestial markers remained, but the specific myths attached to them were fluid, changing to reflect the needs, values, and worldviews of every society that looked up and wondered. This dynamic history shows us that the night sky was never a single, fixed storybook, but a living library of human imagination, its chapters constantly being rewritten by the collective voice of humanity itself. Modern astronomy is now peeling back the layers of these ancient stories to reveal a stunning truth. Many of the most enduring myths were built upon a foundation of precise and careful astronomical observation. Take the great hunter Orion. Hanging from his belt is a sword, and to the naked eye, the middle star of that sword appears not as a sharp point, but as a faint, fuzzy patch. We know this today as the Orion Nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust where new stars are being born. Ancient cultures could not have known its true nature, yet their descriptions are profoundly resonant. The Maori of New Zealand saw it as a canoe, while some Aboriginal Australian traditions viewed it as a cooking fire surrounded by a group of young men. The Greeks themselves sometimes interpreted it as a portal or a gateway. These visions of fire, creation, and passage align uncannily with the nebula's actual role as a stellar nursery, suggesting that ancient sky watchers were incorporating their most striking visual observations directly into their lore. Another compelling example winks from the constellation of Perseus. The star Algol, located in the head of the Gorgon Medusa, is a variable star. Its brightness noticeably dims for several hours every 2 days and 20 hours as a dimmer star orbits in front of it. To the unaided eye, this creates the unmistakable effect of a slow, rhythmic blinking. Is it any wonder that the Greeks named this star Algol, from the Arabic for the demon's head, and saw it as the terrifying, pulsating eye of the monstrous Medusa? This was not a random association, but a direct and brilliant interpretation of a real celestial phenomenon. The sky our ancestors saw was not a static painting. Stars are in constant motion, drifting relative to one another over vast stretches of time. This proper motion means the shapes of the constellations are slowly, imperceptibly changing. The Big Dipper of today, for instance, looked noticeably different 10,000 years ago and will look different 10,000 years from now. This cosmic drift may well explain why some of the earliest descriptions of constellations, from cultures like the ancient Sumerians, do not perfectly match the star patterns we identify today. Their myths were describing a sky that has literally reshaped itself since those stories were first told. Perhaps the most dramatic correlations come from the sudden appearance of so-called guest stars. Chinese court astronomers, along with observers in the Islamic world and Native American rock artists, meticulously recorded the sudden flare of brilliant new stars where none had been seen before. We now know these were supernovae, the catastrophic explosions of dying stars. The Crab Nebula, for example, is the expanding remnant of a supernova recorded by astronomers in 1054. These sudden, brilliant visitors to the night sky were universally interpreted as potent omens, divine messages, or the births and deaths of kings. This fusion of accurate observation and mythological interpretation reveals a sophisticated understanding of the heavens. These stories were not pure fantasy. They were a culture's way of recording, explaining, and giving profound human meaning to the very real and often wondrous behaviors of the cosmos they witnessed night after night, generation after generation. That same celestial storybook that guided ancient navigators also became the foundational library for our greatest artists and writers. Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, are filled with the glittering light of the constellations. When his hero Odysseus is lost at sea, he is told to keep the bear, Ursa Major, on his left hand as he sails, a clear instruction for celestial navigation that would have been instantly familiar to his audience. But for Homer, the stars were more than a map, they were actors in the divine drama. The gods themselves used the constellations as signs and portents, weaving their light into the very fabric of fate that determined the outcomes of battles and the fates of kings. This established a powerful literary tradition where the night sky was not a mere backdrop, but a character in its own right, a silent arbiter of human destiny. Centuries later, this tradition was reborn in the art of the Renaissance. In the soaring vault of the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo did not simply paint biblical scenes. He framed them within an architectural illusion of stone and surrounded them with monumental figures of prophets and sibyls. The entire ceiling can be read as a cosmic map, a divine order reflecting the harmony of the heavens, where human drama unfolds under a celestial mandate. His contemporary, Raphael, went even further in his famous fresco, The School of Athens. He placed the figures of Plato and Aristotle at the center of a grand, arched vault, subtly evoking the celestial spheres and aligning the pursuit of philosophy with the quest to understand the cosmic order written in the stars. These artists used the language of celestial mythology to give visual form to the most profound ideas of their age, blending classical learning with Christian faith under a single, symbolic sky. This symbolic power resonated deeply with William Shakespeare. His plays are studded with stellar references, each one carefully chosen to illuminate character and theme. In Julius Caesar, the title character declares, "I am constant as the northern star," claiming a fixed and unwavering nature, yet the audience knows his fate is anything but stable. In King Lear, the Mad King cries out, "I am not ague-proof," while raving about the star's influence over human flaws. For Shakespeare, the constellations were the ultimate metaphors for the forces of fate, the flaws in our character, and the fragile order we try to impose on a chaotic world. He understood that these ancient stories provided a shared cultural shorthand, a way to instantly connect with his audience's deepest fears and aspirations about their place in the universe. This symbolic language has lost none of its power in the modern era. The heroes of our time, from science fiction adventurers to comic book superheroes, often draw their identities and power from these ancient patterns. A character might be an Orion-class starship captain, embodying the mythic hunter's exploratory spirit, or a superhero might take the name Andromeda, carrying the legacy of the chained princess into new battles. Even our scientific endeavors pay homage to this legacy, naming planetary features, space telescopes, and deep space missions after constellations and their mythological figures. from the Apollo program to the Cassini spacecraft. This unbroken chain of inspiration, from Homer's Seas to the Sistine Chapel and on to the silver screen, proves that the Starborn heroes are more than just legends. They are a living vocabulary, a timeless set of archetypes that continue to give shape to our stories, allowing each new generation to project its own dreams and struggles onto the eternal canvas of the night. Our modern star charts tell only one version of a much larger human story. For countless indigenous cultures, the night sky was not a parade of heroic figures, but a living library of practical knowledge, ecological wisdom, and sacred lore. They saw patterns and meanings in the heavens that were deeply interwoven with the rhythms of the land and sea, creating celestial systems that sustained life for millennia. In the vast Australian outback, Aboriginal peoples look up at the shimmering band of the Milky Way and see not a river of milk, but a great celestial emu. This is not a figure drawn with stars, but with the dark patches of interstellar dust silhouetted against the starry backdrop. The emu's shape changes throughout the year, its posture shifting from running to sitting. When the emu appears to be sitting on its nest in the sky, people on the ground know that the real emus are laying their eggs, signaling the perfect time to gather this vital food source. This is astronomy as a direct, practical guide to survival, where the cosmos and the Earth are in constant, meaningful conversation. Meanwhile, in the dense rainforests of Mesoamerica, the Maya were building a celestial empire of the mind. Their obsession with time led them to create astonishingly precise calendars, one of which was governed by the cycles of Venus. They tracked the planet's appearances as both the morning and evening star with such accuracy that their predictions remain correct to this day. This was not an abstract exercise. The movements of Venus were tied to the legitimacy of their kings and the timing of warfare. Their temples and pyramids aligned to capture the light of specific celestial bodies on critical dates. Their entire cosmology was architecture, a stone and stucco manifestation of the sky's order. Across the world's largest ocean, Polynesian navigators undertook voyages that seem almost impossible. They sailed thousands of miles across the open Pacific, guided not by compasses or sextants, but by a mental map of the heavens known as the star compass. This system divided the horizon into 32 directional houses, each anchored by the rising and setting points of key stars and constellations, a knowledge base encompassing hundreds of celestial markers. They could read the subtle swells of the ocean, the flight patterns of birds, and the specific color of the clouds, but the stars were their primary highway. A star like Hokulea, which we call Arcturus, was a zenith star for the Hawaiian Islands, a celestial signpost confirming their latitude. For them, the sky was a dynamic, three-dimensional map, and every star was a guide pointing the way home. These indigenous systems reveal a fundamentally different priority. While Western mythology often focused on the epic struggles of individual heroes, these traditions emphasized community, relationship, and responsibility. The stars taught when to plant and when to harvest, when to hunt and when to fish, how to navigate and how to live in balance with the natural world. The recent and powerful revitalization of this knowledge is more than a recovery of lost techniques. It is a profound challenge to the idea that there is only one correct way to see the cosmos. It reminds us that our engagement with the night sky can be as diverse, as practical, and as deeply connected to the Earth as the countless cultures who have always called it home. This deep need to find our reflection in the stars points to a profound psychological truth. Constellation myths are not just ancient stories, they are fundamental tools that helped humanity grapple with its own existence. They provide a cosmic context for our brief lives, transforming the cold, indifferent vacuum of space into a familiar landscape filled with meaning and purpose. At their core, these stories address our most primal fear, the fear of mortality. The very act of turning a hero into a constellation is a powerful psychological solution to the problem of death. It suggests that through great deeds or profound love, a part of us can escape oblivion and achieve a form of eternal life, forever remembered in the permanent record of the night sky. The legend of Orion, forever hunting, or the Pleiades, forever sparkling as sisters, offers a comforting narrative that our essence might not simply vanish, but could be translated into something everlasting. During times of immense uncertainty, these celestial narratives become psychological anchors. When plagues, wars, or natural disasters shattered the predictable order of daily life, people could look up and see the same constellations performing their eternal, reliable dance. The story of Hercules overcoming his 12 labors was not just a tale of strength, it was a metaphor for human endurance, a promise that even the most Herculean struggles could be overcome and would ultimately be rewarded with a place of honor. The myth of Cassiopeia being punished for her vanity reinforced a sense of cosmic justice, a belief that even when earthly justice failed, a larger moral order still governed the universe. This provided a crucial psychological counterbalance to the chaos and suffering of the human world, offering a framework that made suffering bearable and chaos comprehensible. Our brains are biologically predisposed to this kind of storytelling. Cognitive science reveals that human memory is not designed for lists of raw data, but for narratives with characters, conflicts, and resolutions. This is precisely why constellation myths were such brilliant vehicles for transmitting complex astronomical knowledge across countless generations. It is far easier to remember that the 3 stars of Orion's belt are the hunter's weapon than to memorize their precise celestial coordinates. The story of the Great Bear being chased by hunters across the sky effortlessly encodes the Big Dipper's circular path around Polaris and its changing position with the seasons. The myth becomes the mnemonic device, ensuring that vital information about navigation, timekeeping, and seasonal cycles is not just remembered but cherished and retold. Modern psychology gives us a name for the feeling these stories evoke, an awe experience. Gazing up at a star-filled sky and contemplating its vastness and its ancient legends can trigger a profound sense of awe. This emotion has measurable psychological benefits, shrinking our egoistic concerns while simultaneously expanding our sense of connection to something vastly larger than ourselves. It produces feelings of humility, wonder, and a renewed sense of meaning, directly enhancing our emotional well-being. This explains why, even in our age of powerful telescopes and cosmic photography, the old stories still hold such power. We may know that the red giant Betelgeuse in Orion's shoulder is a dying star, but understanding it as part of a celestial hunter's form adds a layer of personal significance that raw data can never provide. The constellations endure because they speak to a part of us that science alone cannot satisfy, the part that craves narrative, that seeks comfort, and that needs to feel at home in a universe of incomprehensible scale. They are a testament to a timeless human impulse to not only understand the cosmos, but to find our own heart beating within its silent, infinite expanse. The stones of Stonehenge stand as silent witnesses to an ancient conversation with the cosmos. Every year, on the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, flooding the central altar with light. This was no accident of construction. The entire monument is a colossal astronomical machine. Its massive trilithons and sarsen circle positioned to mark not only solar events, but also the risings and settings of key stars and constellations. For the people who built it, this alignment was the physical manifestation of their mythology, a place where the turning wheel of the sky met the solid earth, guiding their seasonal rituals and connecting their community to the eternal cycles of the stars. This is the realm of archaeoastronomy, a field that deciphers the celestial codes written in stone and mortar. It reveals a world where architecture was not just shelter, but a sacred interface with the heavens. Across the globe, the Great Pyramid of Giza embodies this principle with breathtaking precision. Its four sides are aligned almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions, an engineering marvel in itself. But the most profound connection is celestial. The three pyramids of the Giza Plateau are arranged to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt. For the Egyptians, the constellation Orion was the celestial form of Osiris, the god of death and resurrection. By building a perfect earthly duplicate, they created a powerful machine of rebirth, a gateway designed to project the soul of the deceased pharaoh directly into the afterlife to join Osiris for eternity. Here, the myth of the Starborn hero was not just a story told, it was a journey architecturally facilitated, a cosmic map made of limestone and ambition. Far to the south, the Mayan observatory of El Caracol at Chichen Itzá stands as a testament to a different kind of celestial obsession. Its peculiar, spiraling tower is pierced with narrow windows and slots that are not placed for viewing the landscape, but for framing specific points in the sky. These sightlines were meticulously calibrated to track the complex cycles of Venus. The Maya saw Venus as a god, a celestial warrior whose movements dictated the timing of war and sacrifice. When the planet appeared in a certain window, it was not just an astronomical event, it was a divine signal, a command from the heavens that triggered real-world actions. The building itself became a clockwork powered by planetary motion, its architecture a direct response to the mythology of the stars. These structures prove that constellation mythology was far more than an abstract belief system. It was a tangible force that dictated the orientation of cities, the design of temples, and the very layout of sacred spaces. People did not just look up at the stories in the sky, they lived and worshipped inside buildings that were physical extensions of those stories. The daily experience of moving through a city aligned with the stars, of witnessing the solstice light pierce a darkened chamber, would have reinforced the cosmic order with every passing season. This profound integration of sky and earth reveals the incredible sophistication of ancient knowledge, a wisdom written not on paper, but on the very face of the land, inviting us to read the heavens in the stones they left behind. There is another way to read the night sky, one that finds form not in points of light, but in the profound darkness between them. While most constellation systems trace heroes and beasts with brilliant stars, some of humanity's most creative celestial maps were drawn with shadow and silence. These are the dark constellations, celestial figures born from the opaque dust clouds that drift through the glowing river of the Milky Way. The Inca, masters of an empire high in the Andes, looked upon this starry band and saw a celestial menagerie etched in darkness. They perceived the great mother llama, Yacana, drinking from a celestial river, her form defined by the dust clouds that blocked the starlight behind her. Nearby, they identified a fox, a toad, and a serpent, all shaped from these same dark nebulae. These were not abstract symbols, their positions and movements were intricately tied to the agricultural calendar and religious ceremonies, guiding the rhythm of life in the high mountains. Their mythology was written in the negative space of the cosmos, a testament to a different kind of observational genius. On the other side of the Pacific, Aboriginal Australian traditions hold one of the most profound examples of this dark constellation art, the emu in the sky. This immense celestial being is not outlined by stars at all. Its long neck, plump body, and sturdy legs are formed entirely by the dark lanes of interstellar dust that streak across the Milky Way's bright core. The emu's posture changes throughout the year, from running to sitting on its nest, and this celestial transformation is a direct, practical guide. When the emu in the sky appears to be sitting, people on the ground know that the real emus are laying their eggs, signaling the perfect time to gather this vital food source. This is astronomy deeply woven into the fabric of survival, where the most important celestial map is the one drawn with emptiness. The very existence of these dark constellations reveals the incredible flexibility of human perception. Our ancestors were not passive observers, they were active interpreters who used every part of the celestial canvas, both the brilliant pinpricks of light and the vast Inca voids. This approach created a different kind of mythology. While star-based constellations often told epic tales of gods and heroes, these dark constellations were more frequently connected to the earthly, the practical, and the immediate. They represented the animals that shared the land, the spirits that created it, and the ecological knowledge necessary to sustain life. They challenge our most basic definition of a constellation, forcing us to expand our understanding of how cultures creatively engaged with the cosmos. By reading the stories written in shadow, they discovered a deeper, more intimate layer of the celestial storybook, one that speaks not of distant dramas, but of the living, breathing world right here at our feet. The stars that once guided ancient navigators now guide modern marketing campaigns. Our deepest celestial myths have become powerful commercial assets, their ancient magic repackaged for a consumer age. The global Zodiac industry generates billions of dollars every year, built entirely upon the framework of those 12 constellations first mapped by the Babylonians. Daily horoscopes in newspapers and apps offer personalized guidance, while online personality quizzes promise to reveal your inner lion or celestial archer based on your birth date. This entire economy runs on the engine of ancient stories, yet the profound cultural context of those myths, the original lessons of hubris and heroism, is often stripped away, leaving behind a simplified, mass-marketable version of destiny. The imagery of constellations has become a universal branding language. Automotive companies embed star clusters in their logos to suggest reliability and timeless navigation, while technology startups use celestial names to imply they are guiding humanity toward a brilliant future. These brands are not selling mythology, they are selling the feelings the mythology evokes, a sense of wonder, direction, and eternal truth, all carefully distilled into a corporate identity. This commercial impulse reaches its logical extreme with companies that sell star naming rights. For a fee, you can officially name a star after a loved one, receiving a decorative certificate to mark the transaction. It is a powerful appeal to that ancient human desire for a personal, permanent mark on the cosmos. The poignant irony is that these names hold no official standing with the scientific astronomical organizations that actually catalog the heavens. You are purchasing a story, a sentiment, a piece of mythological territory that exists only in a private registry, a modern echo of the age-old need to claim our place in the stellar tapestry. Even our entertainment is saturated with these repurposed archetypes. Hollywood blockbusters and epic video games constantly mine constellation mythology for their plots and characters. A hero's journey might be mapped directly onto the 12 labors of Hercules, or a spaceship might be named the Andromeda Ascendant, instantly communicating a legacy of exploration and rescue. These modern storytellers are the new mythmakers, introducing ancient celestial narratives to generations who may never have learned them otherwise, though often in a streamlined, action-packed form that prioritizes spectacle over spiritual nuance. This widespread commercialization is not necessarily a corruption of the old stories, but rather a testament to their incredible resilience and adaptability. It proves that the human brain remains wired to respond to these archetypes, whether they are encountered on a temple wall or a smartphone screen. The constellations have been successfully translated into the dominant language of our time, the language of commerce and popular culture. They continue to fulfill their ancient purpose, to help us understand ourselves and our place in the world, even if that understanding is now filtered through the lens of a brand identity or a blockbuster film. This evolution raises a compelling question. As these stories are endlessly adapted and sold, what deeper meanings might we be trading for convenience and entertainment? A profound silence is falling over the night sky, not for lack of stars, but because we can no longer see them. The glow of our cities has created a perpetual twilight, a veil of light pollution that obscures the ancient constellations from the majority of humanity. For over 80% of the global population, the shimmering river of the Milky Way is now invisible from their homes, a celestial landmark erased by the glare of our own making. This is more than an astronomical loss. It is the severing of a cultural lifeline that has connected every human generation for thousands of years. The stories of Orion and the Great Bear, once told under the very stars they depict, are increasingly confined to books and screens, transforming a lived, sensory experience into a disconnected abstraction. The threat is most acute for indigenous communities whose cultural identity, lore, and survival knowledge are woven directly into the patterns of the stars. When the dark sky vanishes, it does not just take the stars, it takes with it the teaching moments, the seasonal ceremonies, and the oral traditions that depend on direct celestial observation. A vital thread in the tapestry of human knowledge is fraying, leaving these ancient stories dangerously vulnerable to being forgotten. In response, a global movement has emerged to reclaim the night. Organizations like the International Dark Sky Association are certifying sanctuaries and parks where the heavens remain pristine, recognizing that protecting darkness is not just about seeing stars, but about preserving a fundamental part of our shared human heritage, an ecological and cultural resource of immeasurable value. Simultaneously, we are adapting through technology. Planetarium software and mobile apps now project the constellations onto our ceilings and phones, allowing us to learn the myths even when the real sky is hidden. Yet this digital translation fundamentally changes our relationship to the stories. It becomes curated information presented on demand, a far cry from the patient, personal discovery of finding a hero's shape in the vast, untamed wilderness overhead. Our celestial inheritance is at a crossroads, caught between the fading glow of natural starlight and the bright, convenient screens that offer a substitute. The question we must confront is whether a story about the heavens can retain its full power when it is no longer learned by looking up. The stars were the original compass, a global positioning system written in light. For the Polynesian voyagers, the open ocean was not an empty void but a grid of celestial highways. They carried in their minds a star compass, a mental map that divided the horizon into 32 directional houses, each one defined by the precise rising and setting points of key stars and constellations. They knew that the star known as Hokulea, which we call Arcturus, passed directly over the Hawaiian Islands, a zenith star that confirmed their latitude like a celestial signpost. They did not just see individual stars, they saw the entire sky as a dynamic, three-dimensional chart, reading the swells of the ocean and the flight of birds alongside the unwavering paths of their stellar guides. This knowledge allowed them to colonize the largest ocean on Earth, sailing thousands of miles across open water with nothing but the sky as their map. On the other side of the world, beneath the vast, silent expanse of desert skies, nomadic traders faced a similar challenge of featureless terrain. Caravans crossing the Sahara or the Arabian Peninsula relied on the constellations to find their way. The consistent, predictable arc of certain stars told them not only the direction to travel but also the time of year, signaling when to move to avoid the fiercest heat or to reach an oasis when water was most plentiful. The stars were their clock and their roadmap, deeply embedded in the oral traditions that guided their survival. When European explorers began their own age of discovery, they brought a new tool to this ancient practice, the astrolabe. This intricate brass instrument allowed a navigator to measure the angle of a star like Polaris above the horizon, translating that celestial position into a precise latitude. It was a fusion of old and new, merging the timeless stories of the constellations with the cutting-edge technology of the moment. The North Star, Polaris, became the anchor of this entire system for the Northern Hemisphere. Because it sits almost directly above Earth's North Pole, it appears nearly motionless in the sky, while all other stars seem to wheel around it. For any traveler, knowing how to find Polaris meant instantly knowing which way was north, a fixed point of reference in a turning sky. But what about the southern hemisphere where Polaris dips below the horizon? There, cultures developed their own celestial anchors. The brilliant Southern Cross, along with the two pointer stars nearby, served as a crucial marker for southern latitudes, its orientation pointing the way toward the south celestial pole. The profound knowledge encoded in these systems demonstrates that constellation mythology was never separate from practical reality. The stories of the heroes and beasts were mnemonics, unforgettable narratives that helped people remember which star rose where and when. The myth was the user manual and the sky was the instrument. Every time an ancient navigator steered by a constellation, they were not just following a map of light, they were being guided by a story, proving that our greatest journeys across the planet were, in truth, guided tours of the heavens. These celestial stories are not set in stone, but are instead being rewritten by a new generation of storytellers who are listening for the voices lost in the old narratives. A powerful feminist reinterpretation is sweeping through constellation mythology, reclaiming female figures from their traditional roles as victims, trophies, or cautionary tales. Take the constellation Cassiopeia, forever circling the pole in her distinct W-shaped throne. The classical myth condemns her as a vain queen punished for her boasting. But through a modern lens, her story transforms. What if her crime was not vanity, but a bold assertion of authority in a rigidly patriarchal system? Her eternal position in the sky is no longer a sentence of humiliation, but a symbol of a powerful female ruler who refused to be silenced, her throne a permanent fixture of celestial power. This shift in perspective turns a lesson in humility into a declaration of female sovereignty. The story of Andromeda undergoes a similar transformation. Chained to her rock as a sacrifice to a sea monster, she has long been the archetypal damsel in distress, a passive prize for the hero Perseus. Feminist retellings are breaking these chains, focusing instead on her quiet courage. What must it have taken to endure that ordeal, to face the monstrous unknown without yielding? The narrative is being reframed to celebrate her resilience, her survival, and her strength in the face of certain doom, making her a co-hero of her own story rather than merely the object of a rescue. This reclaiming of agency extends to the delicate cluster of the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. In the standard Greek myth, they are objects of Orion's relentless pursuit, forever fleeing across the sky. But older, pre-patriarchal versions of their story and new interpretations paint a different picture. They are a celestial sisterhood, a community of powerful women bound by loyalty and mutual support. Their closeness in the sky is not about flight but about solidarity, a testament to the strength found in female community. These reinterpretations are not inventions but often rediscoveries. Scholars point to older layers of these myths, versions that celebrated female power and divinity before they were adapted and often diminished by later male-dominated societies. The goddess Artemis, for instance, was once a powerful mistress of wild animals, and her connection to the bear constellation Ursa major hints at a far more ancient and formidable archetype. This feminist re-examination proves that constellation myths are not frozen artifacts from a lost age. They are living, breathing traditions that evolve alongside our own cultural values. As we change how we see power, agency, and gender here on Earth, we inevitably change how we read those same qualities in the stories written in the stars. The night sky remains the same canvas, but we are choosing to paint its heroines with new, more vibrant colors of strength and autonomy. Astronomy's powerful telescopes have pulled back the curtain on a celestial illusion. We have discovered that the great hunter Orion is not a unified figure at all, but a chance alignment of stars flung across immense tracts of space. The three brilliant gems of his belt, which myth portrays as a single weapon, are actually strangers to one another. Alnilam, the middle star, is a supergiant over 1,300 light-years away, while Mintaka and Alnitak are hundreds of light-years closer and farther, respectively. They are not a family, they are lonely giants in a vast darkness, each moving on its own independent path through the galaxy. Their connection exists only in the narrow perspective from our tiny world, a beautiful accident of geometry. This scientific reality creates a profound tension with the mythological stories we have cherished for millennia. The celestial scorpion that forever chases Orion is not a divine punishment, but another random scattering of suns. The great bear circling the pole is not a transformed nymph, but a collection of stars that do not even know each other exists. This knowledge can feel like a disenchantment, as if science has stripped the sky of its magic and replaced a living story book with a cold, impersonal catalogue of data. The very foundation of the Zodiac, a system built on the sun's path through 12 specific constellations, has been physically shifted by the slow, grand wobble of Earth's axis. This precession of the equinoxes means that over the 2 millennia since the system was codified, the sun's position at the spring equinox has drifted from the constellation Aries into Pisces and will soon enter Aquarius. The sign you were born under in an astrological column no longer corresponds to the actual constellation the sun was in on your birthday. This is not a matter of belief, but of measurable celestial mechanics, a fundamental disconnect between the ancient map and the modern sky. Yet this tension does not have to end in the defeat of one worldview by the other. Many scientists and historians now advocate for a perspective of coexistence. They suggest we can fully embrace the astronomical truth that constellations are not physically connected, while simultaneously valuing their immense cultural power. The stories are not factually true in a scientific sense, but they are profoundly true in a human sense. They represent thousands of years of human wonder, our attempts to find order and meaning in the cosmos, and our need to encode our survival knowledge and moral values into the most permanent medium we could find, the night sky itself. This is the resolution to the modern divide. We can teach a child that the stars of Orion's belt are unimaginably distant from one another, and in the very next breath, tell them the ancient story of the mighty hunter and his eternal pursuit of the 7 sisters. One truth explains the physical universe, the other explains the human heart. This balanced view reflects a much larger conversation happening in our world today, a recognition that science and mythology are not enemies, but different languages for understanding reality. One describes the how, the other explores the why. By holding both the scientific reality and the mythological interpretation in our minds, we do not diminish either. Instead, we enrich our experience of the universe, allowing it to be both a realm of magnificent physical laws and a canvas for our most enduring stories. Our future among the stars will fundamentally rewrite our oldest stories. Imagine a child born on Mars, looking up at a sky where the familiar shapes of Earth have vanished. The Big Dipper is gone, Orion is a distorted memory, and the North Star is just another faint point of light. For the first time in human history, we will need to create constellations from scratch, drawing new heroes and monsters onto an alien celestial sphere. These Martian constellations will be born from the struggles and triumphs of the first settlers, their myths reflecting the harsh beauty of the red planet, perhaps a great rover etched in starlight or a canal builder reaching for the heavens. This is not science fiction, it is the next logical chapter in our relationship with the cosmos, a shift from interpreting the sky to actively designing it. Our telescopes have already added a new dimension to the old patterns. We now know that within the boundaries of Lyra, the Harp orbits a world called Kepler 452b, a distant Earth-like planet. Suddenly, the constellation is not just a musical instrument from ancient myth, but a potential home for another story, another civilization looking back at us. Every exoplanet discovery transforms a constellation from a flat picture into a potential neighborhood, inviting us to wonder what myths beings under that alien sun might tell about the strange, patterned lights in their own night sky. The rise of space tourism promises to rekindle a direct, personal connection to the stars. For a passenger gazing out from a spacecraft window, the constellations will no longer be a distant ceiling but a surrounding ocean of light, a perspective once reserved for gods and heroes. This visceral experience could spark a global renaissance in naked-eye astronomy, as people seek to learn the names of the celestial landmarks they have visited. Yet, some propose going further, creating official new constellations to celebrate our modern age, outlining a telescope or a DNA helix among the stars. While a noble effort, these proposed figures often feel sterile, lacking the cultural depth and psychological resonance forged over millennia by countless storytellers. They represent achievement, but do they speak to the human heart like the story of Orion's boast or the Pleiades' flight? The true future of celestial mythology lies not in replacing the old stories, but in allowing them to evolve as we do. Our journey into space is the greatest hero's journey we have ever undertaken, a collective departure from our home world. The new myths we create on other worlds will be our way of making the cosmos feel like home, of projecting our new identity as a spacefaring people onto the infinite canvas above. They will be the stories that guide the first Martians, that comfort the travelers between worlds, and that remind us all that the human need to find our story in the stars is a compass that points forever outward. The stars have become a new frontier in the fight for cultural survival. As globalization flattens regional differences, the preservation of diverse constellation systems offers a powerful defense for unique worldviews and the traditional knowledge they hold. Organizations like UNESCO now formally recognize certain indigenous astronomical traditions as intangible cultural heritage, a crucial step in acknowledging that these are not just stories, but entire systems of philosophy, law, and ecology written in the stars. This global recognition validates what these communities have always known, that their celestial knowledge is a vital thread in the rich tapestry of human understanding, essential to their identity and continuity. A powerful movement of indigenous astronomy revitalization is actively working to reclaim this heritage. For generations, colonial policies actively suppressed these knowledge systems, severing the connection between people and their ancestral skies. Today, elders and knowledge keepers are collaborating with a new generation to document and revive star lore that was driven underground, piecing together fragments of memory and oral tradition to restore a complete celestial calendar. This is not merely an academic exercise, it is an act of cultural healing and resilience, a way to breathe life back into languages, ceremonies, and a sense of place that was nearly lost. Modern technology has become an unexpected ally in this ancient endeavor. Digital archives are being carefully constructed to store this precious knowledge, while planetarium shows are being developed to share indigenous constellation stories with the world. But this work is done with profound respect, often following strict cultural protocols regarding who can tell certain stories and when. It is about sharing, not taking, ensuring that the communities who created these myths retain ownership and control over how their celestial legacy is presented. This respectful collaboration is now entering classrooms, where educational programs are beginning to incorporate multiple cultural perspectives on the cosmos. Instead of teaching only the Greek constellations as the default, students might learn about the Aboriginal emu in the sky alongside Orion, or the Polynesian star compass alongside the European astrolabe. This approach does more than just diversify the curriculum. It fundamentally challenges the idea that there is only one correct way to view the universe. It teaches children that science and storytelling can be partners, and that human knowledge is beautifully plural. Preserving these diverse systems is about far more than saving old tales. It is about safeguarding different ways of knowing, unique philosophical frameworks for understanding humanity's place in the cosmos. Each constellation system that disappears represents a lost language for interpreting the world, a unique color fading from the spectrum of human imagination. The enduring power of these myths in the modern world proves that they are not relics, but living, breathing systems of wisdom that continue to orient us, not just in space, but in culture, spirit, and our relationship to the Earth itself. That personal relationship with the stars is a quiet inheritance waiting for you to claim it. Stepping away from the glow of screens and into the true darkness of a rural night is the first step toward this connection. In that profound quiet, your eyes adjust, and the sky ceases to be a backdrop. It becomes a deep, velvety canvas where the constellations emerge not as labeled diagrams, but as living presences. This simple act of patient observation is the same contemplative space from which the original stories were born. You are participating in the same fundamental human experience as a Babylonian priest or a Polynesian navigator, looking up at the same stars and feeling the same pull to find meaning in their silent arrangement. When you learn that the bright red star Aldebaran is the angry eye of the bull in Taurus, or that the delicate cluster of the Pleiades are seven sisters fleeing a hunter, the sky transforms from an abstraction into the world's oldest storybook. These narratives add a layer of emotional depth that pure astronomy cannot provide, turning random points of light into characters in an epic drama. This connection becomes even more powerful when you seek out the constellations of your own ancestry. Finding the stars that guided your distant forebears, whether they were Celtic farmers, West African storytellers, or indigenous hunters, can create a visceral sense of continuity. You are not just looking at stars, you are looking at the same celestial landmarks that comforted, guided, and inspired your ancestors, forging a tangible link across generations and a profound feeling of belonging in the grand sweep of time. This practice can also be a form of mindfulness. Focusing your attention on the steady, unchanging patterns of Ursa Major or Orion can act as a powerful anchor for a restless mind. The simple rhythm of tracing the lines of a constellation, of breathing in the cool night air, pulls you out of your daily anxieties and into a state of calm awareness. Your personal worries begin to feel smaller against the vast, timeless scale of the cosmos, providing a healthy dose of perspective that can ease stress and recenter your thoughts. And why should the ancient Greeks or the Inca have all the fun? The human impulse to storytell the sky is yours to continue. Perhaps you see a celestial coffee cup in a cluster of dim stars, or a great dragonfly in the summer Milky Way. By naming these patterns for yourself, or by creating modern myths about a spaceship or a forgotten hero, you are not being frivolous. You are participating in the oldest and most democratic of human traditions, adding your own small chapter to our collective celestial narrative. Your own curiosity and imagination are the only tools required to make the night sky personally meaningful, proving that this ancient practice is not a relic, but a living, breathing dialogue between humanity and the cosmos that is always open for you to join. Our journey through the Starborn heroes reveals a profound truth about ourselves. These constellations became living legends because they hold a mirror to the human soul, reflecting our timeless fears, our boundless aspirations, and our most urgent questions about life and death. They are far more than ancient fables. They are a remarkable fusion of sharp observation and wild imagination, a universal language of cultural expression that has guided us for millennia. Think of the Polynesian voyager trusting his life to the star compass as he crossed the vast Pacific, or the Renaissance artist translating celestial myths onto the vault of a chapel ceiling. In times of plague or war, people looked up and saw the same heroes performing their eternal, reliable dance, a cosmic context that made earthly suffering feel bearable and part of a larger, intelligible order. This celestial storybook provided a psychological anchor in a chaotic world. Now, as the glow of our cities dims the stars and our spacecraft venture toward new skies, this ancient relationship is transforming once again. Light pollution may sever our direct visual link to the myths, but our need for them persists, finding new life in digital planetariums and the names we give to distant exoplanets. The stories we tell about the stars will inevitably evolve as we become an interplanetary species, drawing new heroes and monsters onto the canvas of a Martian sky. Yet their essential function remains unchanged, to help us understand our place in this breathtakingly vast universe. The enduring power of these myths reminds us that we are, at our core, storytelling creatures. We are driven to find meaning in patterns, whether in the scattered stars above or the complex chapters of our own lives. This is your invitation to reclaim that connection. On your next clear night, find a patch of darkness and simply look up. Let the ancient patterns of Orion or the Big Dipper spark your own wonder. See the heroes and monsters not as lessons from a forgotten past, but as eternal guides. And as you trace their familiar shapes, remember that you are part of this unbroken chain of wonder, with every right to imagine new stories for our rapidly changing world, adding your own voice to the greatest story ever told.